Yeah, Cortez is a very awkward fighter, a former MMA fighter. He doesn't really have a style. He's big, he's strong.
A turn and burn type of fight for the DRs. Waldo Cortes-Acosta. He's going by the nickname of Salsa Boy. At this point, he's going to be taking on a short notice fighter, but who was already ready for a fight. It is the Vanilla Gorilla Chase Sherman. Now, I want to make sure I get these dates right. UFC win number 1 for Cortes-Acosta came on October 29th. He got a decision win over Jared Vanderaa. That was Chase Sherman's last win as well, was Vanderaa. But if you look at it for Sherman, he was due to take on Josh Parisian on November the 5th. So both of these guys either competed or were supposed to compete in the very, very not so distant past. And if you look at it for Chase Sherman, weighed in successfully, had the face off with Parisian on the day of the fight. Parisian out due to health issues. So Sherman's left without a dance partner. Sherman now gets Cortes-Acosta. Sherman do Parisian, a guy who can box a bit to get on the inside to get you down to the mat. Cortes-Acosta boxes, and that's it. Waldo Cortes-Acosta, he boxes, and that's kind of the thing about him. I mean, I know the crazy backstory, coming to the States from the Dominican, he was a pitcher in the Reds organization, skirmish in the dugout, joins, the combat sports. He goes over and fights in boxing. He's 6-4, and we had that bit of a sound clip there. That was from his last fight with Top Rank, but for Cortes-Acosta, 6-4 in boxing, 3 wins by knockout, 3 losses by knockout. And his last fight, he took on a guy, and I want to make sure that I mention this and I get this one right. He took on a guy named Sonny Conto. I talked about Sonny Conto last week in our videos, Matt. He's Andre Petrosky's training partner. He's a boxer out of Philly, and Sonny Conto is undefeated at 11-0 at this point. And in that fight, Conto worked behind the jab, pushed Waldo back. Waldo's stance in boxing is the exact same as the stance in MMA. So in boxing, he didn't have to defend the kicks, brother. And in that fight, Conto works the jab, backs up Cortes-Acosta till he's almost in a corner of the ring, throws a jab, and then at a certain point, Cortes-Acosta brings both hands up like this, and Sonny just throws a right cross right down the middle, and it drops Cortes-Acosta, who can't get up off the mat at all for the count, and he ends up getting knocked out in that one. Comes back over to MMA after that foray in boxing. That loss was in 2021. And then picks up where he left off. Undefeated in MMA. Fights Thomas Peterson for the LFA title. Wins that fight. He's losing not every minute of every round, but he's losing that fight handily. And then for him, it's a straight right down the pipe that wobbles Peterson. He ends up dropping him, face planting and winning. Goes on Dana White's Contender Series this past summer. Fights Danilo Suzarchi. He's a big favorite in that fight, almost a 4-1 favorite. Looked really good in that fight. Takes on Vanderaa. Looks great in the first round. Doesn't know how to check a leg kick. Round 2, round 3, a little bit off the rails. You'd say he won round 2. Round 3 he didn't. But for Vanderaa in that fight, in terms of the total numbers of what he landed, 56 significant strikes, 39 of those were leg kicks.
That's good, but the problem is if you're only landing leg kicks and you're not able to set anything else up after it, it does leave a little bit more to be desired. And that's why I'll be interested to see what Chase Sherman's able to do, because if you followed the career of Chase Sherman, other than the weird is he not in the UFC right now runs that he's had, he does throw very effective leg kicks offensively. It's been a part of his game even when he wasn't in the UFC after he got cut initially. He'd have some fights over in Jungle Fight. That was a big part of his game.
Island fights. He didn't go to Brazil.
Sorry, thank you. Island fights. That was a big part of his game even over there. And we'd even seen his kicking game start to evolve a little bit. He was going to the body, going to the head a little bit more. He has gone away from that, I would say. Still primarily more of a leg kicker. But the thing about Sherman is he does set up most things with his own boxing. He does have elbows, I will give him that. He is a decent fighter on the inside. But the thing about Chase Sherman that is the biggest red flag I could possibly plant in the ground is he fights, we'd say how Luke Rockhold pulls back with his chin up. Chase Sherman is a heavyweight version of that, but he'll do it in the pocket. He is a guy who will pursue offense at the decline of defense. And against a guy like Cortes-Acosta, who, yes, I think that leg kicks are going to land against him. I think the movement, oddly enough, of Chase Sherman might give him troubles early too. I just don't know how much Chase Sherman's going to be able to do off of the leg kicks, because let's say he does land the leg kicks. At a certain point, he's going to have to get into that boxing range with Cortes-Acosta. And yes, maybe he can use the clinch to then get some dirty boxing and use his elbows, make this an MMA fight more than just a boxing fight. But the one thing I do like out of Cortes-Acosta that gives him a good sign as a guy being as big as he is You don't see guys throw boxing combinations at his size in the UFC. Normally when you have bigger heavyweights who are kind of at the limit, they wing a lot of power shots, whereas Cortes-Acosta will stay composed and stay technical on the inside, which you do like to see.
Yeah, like I say, you lose to Sonny Conte, you get knocked out in 2021, and that's not great for your boxing career, but what does it have to do with MMA? If you look at the way that Cortes-Acosta boxes in MMA, it's better than guys in the heavyweight division. His combinations are good. He goes to the body and to the head. He'll rip lead hooks to the body and then come up.
Too.
He's really big for the division as well. I mean, 6'4". Again, both of these guys, same height, same reach, but Cortes-Acosta is going to weigh in a little bit heavier. But when you look at it for Cortes-Acosta, like we were talking about him like the next Chris Daukaus in the division, like a guy who could really go on a run.
What does that mean, though?
I'm completely stunted on his growth after that fight against Jared Vanderaa. Vanderaa had quite literally a leg to stand on to having won that fight. You could have scored at 29-28 either way. For Chase Sherman, his fight against Vanderaa, first round, Sherman, second round, Vanderaa, third round was Vanderaa until Sherman unleashed with the combination that finished him. But for Sherman, my big point is when you do just want to talk about leg kicks and boxing combinations, which are his specialty, the leg kicks against Ike Villanueva, he had a welt on the front of his shin at the end of the first round. At the second round, he ends up finishing him. The fight against Parker Porter, 33 leg kicks. The fight against Arlovsky, 17. And the fight that Sherman had against Vanderaa, he landed 19 in that fight. If you do look at it, the thing that does scare me out of Sherman, not just pull back, but Mark Madsen dips to the right all the time. Mark Madsen dipping to the right, working his boxing. Chase Sherman dips to the right in the pocket,
closes eyes,
which is scary against Waldo Cortes-Acosta, whose right hand is his biggest weapon. So that does give me cause for concern.
It's just my big problem is, unless Sherman can get a finish based off the leg kicks, I do think it's going to be difficult for him to get a lot of that in-between work done on the inside, because I do think Cortes-Acosta, since he does keep his hands very high and he is throwing a lot of his own boxing combinations, it's going to be difficult for Sherman to find those in-betweens to decide, okay, now I'm in defense mode. Now I can initiate my own offense. I just think it's going to be an interesting fight for Sherman, but I totally agree with what you had said. I was with you. I thought Cortes-Acosta had a decent ceiling. It's always difficult to tell in the heavyweight division.
I'm not even joking. Like top 15, like 15 to 10. Like, we're going to fight Shamil Durakhimov in 6 months.
But again, my big point is, and again, I don't disagree with you at all, how much higher in the division is Chase Sherman than a guy like Jared Vanderaa? Because again, he is higher than him in the division because he has the win over him. But just because you had a close fight with Jared Vanderaa doesn't now make me think, okay, Chase Sherman's going to blow the doors off you. And this is no disrespect to Chase Sherman, but up until his last fight, he wasn't on the greatest run of his career. And I do feel like with his obvious strengths and obvious weaknesses, I just think this is a difficult fight to predict. Because like you had said, the obvious defensive liabilities of Chase Sherman play into the strengths of Cortes-Acosta. And the fact that Cortes-Acosta very much is a boxer who's been transitioning into MMA does leave him limited in a lot of the other aspects of his game.
Sherman getting ready for Parisian, who's going to tier his layers. He's going to work in the takedowns. Well, Cortes-Acosta's not a grappler. And likewise for Cortes-Acosta, Sherman's not a grappler. Cortes-Acosta struggles with the takedown defense in some of his fights. You have a look at the odds here. Cortes-Acosta open a -160 favorite, -185 as it stands. Sherman open a +140, +160. We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. Surprised to us, they are to you. In 2017, the Vanilla Gorilla was the hotness as the Gift King. But he's not now. I'm going to say over under 70% Salsa Boy.
I think it'll be over.
And it is way over. 411 total votes, 81% Cortes-Acosta, 24% by decision, 71% by knockout. For the 19% that have Sherman, 43% by decision, 51% by knockout. You don't get better at checking leg kicks in 2-3 weeks, let alone having an opponent just thrown at you this quick, because you have to focus. Like, this fight was only made in the last couple of weeks. For Chase Sherman, that's his bread and butter, but defensive liabilities you also don't fix in one camp or two camp, and he's had 26 pro fights. So this one's a lot harder to pick than the fan vote and the odds would suggest, I would say.
It is, but I do find myself picking the only slightly younger, I was going to say much younger, Cortes-Acosta, because this is the thing. Unless Chase Sherman's able to hit him with one of those leg kicks that can compromise him enough where you get a stumble, you get like one of those knockdowns, you know what I mean? Like one of the leg kicks where the second it lands, you know significant damage has been made. I don't know how much success Sherman can have in the boxing and with his own kickboxing on the inside and the outside. Again, I think the clinch, if he's able to utilize that, can be a big tool for him. I'm going all the way back to the Daywalker times when he finished him with an elbow.
Let me add to it, because the Daywalker, that was the last fight that Sherman had won that wasn't in the first round, and he's got what? How many? Like, all but one of his wins are by finish. And then he had one, if not two, that were after the first round. So Chase Sherman's a first round guy. But what I loved out of his last fight against Jared Vanderaa was the fact that was in the third round. Second round, he's still throwing good volume. Power and volume were still there in the third round. I like what I saw there. Whereas for Cortes-Acosta, the clinch is different because you're not holding on.
I just don't think Cortes-Acosta has to worry about the takedown.
The kicks are different. He doesn't have to worry about the takedown. If you haven't figured it out, I have Chase Sherman in the matchup. I mean, I think the boxing's there. The kicks are there. Cortes-Acosta, if he wins, first round knockout. And that's not controversial.
I think you do in the second.
After that, I don't see Cortes-Acosta winning the fight by finish. So I have Chase Sherman here. Matt going with Salsa Boy to keep that undefeated record.
But I agree with you wholeheartedly, where we do kind of have to reassess what Cortes-Acosta's ceiling is. Just because I'm picking him in this fight doesn't mean I think he's going to become some world beater. Again, if he shows me something new, let's say he goes out there and even throws a nice leg kick. Just adds that one little wrinkle to his game that gives you confidence that he can continue to add different parts to it. That would just be a nice sign to see. But I really like that point that you had brought up about how this was a guy who felt like he had a lot of hype, but even though he got the result that you look for, he got the win, you still kind of have to reassess where you think he's going to go in the future.
Split on the pick. Let us know who you have down below in the comments section. Some big fights left on this card, including Derrick Lewis and Sergey Spivak in the main event in this weight class. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.